Welcome to this year's Engine Week. It's time to learn all about engines in aviation.
Firewall forward kits, sales and support for the engines, overhauls.
Firewall forward components, radiators, cowlings, engine mounts.
This is based on several hundred Corvair-powered Zeniths that have flown over the years.
Thunderbolt is kind of its own animal for Lycoming.
Now it's Continental Titan, that's how they came together, yeah.
And we're looking for service and support dealers currently.
This is the UL260i, and this is the low compression version.
All right, back out here for Engine Week 2024. We do this every 2 years because there's not a whole lot that changes in engines, but here at Viking Aircraft Engines, there is a bit of change, so we're gonna go over that right now. All right, Jan, so let's bring everybody up to speed on the offerings you've got of all these engines in stock.
All right, let's do them by number first, and we'll talk a little bit about them. We do offer almost too many models. We have we have a 90 even, 130, 140, 150, 160, 175, and 195 horsepower engines. Now, starting over here is our 140 model. The 140 is based on a GM engine. Some people think it might be like the early GM engines that were in their small cars, and they actually didn't have the best of reputation. These engines, however, this 140, and we're going to talk about the 160, are of a newer design. They were designed as a global entity between Opel, General Motors, so forth and so on. So they're absolute latest in the technology. They're very high output engines. In fact, this engine produces more horsepower per cubic centimeter than the Corvette, being made by the same company, Chevrolet. Now, as we move back here, we got, like I said, we're going to do more details, but this is our 160 horsepower, same family of engine as the 140, General Motors produced engine, slightly bigger. Instead of a 1.2 three-cylinder, it's a 1.3, 160 horsepower. Moving over this way, we have what was introduced in a great video that Brian did last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago now, which was the Honda 150 or Viking 150, and it's the 1.8 liter inline four-cylinder single overhead cam 1.8 liter engine, and we've got a lot of those. It's a very popular engine. We're shipping an engine a week, and there's 6 of these here now waiting to find a pallet to go out the door. Now the 130 horsepower engine, actually we kind of a little bit out of the sync here. We did the 150, now we're going back to the 130, but as long as we keep that in, as long as we know that. We have 3 of them here. We got another one sitting over there. We're getting more built in the back. We're not going to be doing these for that much longer. The Honda Fit car is no longer in the United States, and we're replacing this engine with the 150 and the 140 and some of the other models. We're still building a few of them though. Moving over here, we have, as far as displacement, the biggest engine. It's a 2-liter engine. It's been around for a long, long time. If you look at this thing right here, K20 Z5, okay, the K20 is the important part. The K20 series of engines by Honda is the most famous of their engines. It's been in all kinds of cars, in the Civic and so forth, all the way from 2005. There's different models up through the years, and then you got the K20 Z5, the Z6, and all that kind of stuff. Different renderings of the same engine. That's the engine that came by Honda and was introduced with VTEC, high lift, all kinds of power, all kinds of aftermarket pieces you could get for these engines. They produce anywhere from 160 to 200 to 200, 400 horsepower, because there's also a turbocharged version of this engine. We use it out of the HRV and the CRV, and we use it for our 175, and we use it as a very simple inline basic non-turbocharged engine with 2 liters, a little bit more displacement for those that rather not have turbocharging. Now, moving over here, we do have turbocharging. Again, we're back to a smaller engine as far as the displacement, a 1.5 liter engine, but it is turbocharged, and it produces 175 horsepower. This engine's been around for several years now. It's very popular along with the 175 in the Zenith Super Duty airframe and other home-built aircraft as well.
All right, Jan, so that was kind of an overview of all of your offerings. Let's go a little bit deeper into each specific engine and what they are offering your customers.
Okay, well, as you know, we used to specialize in Honda. We still do a lot of Honda engines, but we have expanded into General Motors as well. We all have our preference when it comes to engines, like, oh, I'm a Ford guy, I'm a this, I'm a that. You know, I think we have to realize that all car companies nowadays are kind of global in the sense that even when you look on a Honda, you'll find a fuel pump that's bought from the same company that's using one of the General Motors and so forth and so on. And also the technology of 20 years ago to today, there's nobody out there that are interested in having an engine that would actually fail. Now we're going to start to talk about the engines individually. This is not the smallest one anymore. We do have a 90 horsepower Mitsubishi engine, and that's still available for the smallest of airplanes like Rand's S9, S12 or those kinds of airplanes, or even the early Kit Foxes and so forth and so on. Now when you move up a little bit from there and you're getting into a Zenith 701 or a Sonics or a Kit Fox or Just Aircraft or anything where you would want the kind of power that you would associate with maybe a small Lycoming or like a Rotex 915. Then this particular engine is designed by Viking utilizing the General Motors block and head and basically everything you see here to become a competitive engine with the Rotex 915. Now, it's a 3-cylinder engine, makes it very short. It does have a balance shaft inside the engine, which makes, even though it's a 3-cylinder, it's a very, very smooth running engine. Overhead cams, a coil-on plug ignition. In this case, you see it's directly from above. The coils are not coming in from the side, and even the injectors are directly from above, which makes the engine a little bit unique in the sense that it has kind of like a horseshoe layout here with the coils and the plugs way down inside here. Easy to get to, easy to work on, but that's different than what we're used to on the Hondas where the injectors are coming in from the side. And this is a direct injected engine. Here's the direct injection pump. It is also a turbocharged engine, and we see that when we move over to this side of the engine and we look at the exhaust side. You see that they have the same system as the Hondas with what's called an integral exhaust manifold. There are no external pipes anywhere here. Basically, everything is cast into the engine, and the exhaust comes out of one hole here. And it goes through the turbocharger, and then just a downpipe, a very simple exhaust system. You might say, oh, turbocharger, a little bit complicated. In fact, when you can eliminate these pipes that run all over the engine with the traditional engines or even the Rotex engines, and you can just have this one little flange for a turbocharger, you have two advantages. One, simple. No cracking, no fumes, nothing like that, because this is obviously you're not going to have any leaks here. It's very heavy duty. But more importantly, the turbocharger, because it's on all the time on these kinds of engines, it's not the kind of engines like that you were used to listening to and you heard, oh, I want more power out of my engine, so my turbocharger is going to kick in after I have the throttle all the way open. I'm going to get a little more from the turbocharger. It doesn't work that way with these engines. These engines are always turbocharged, meaning that as soon as it starts up, the wastegate is closed, and what that does for you, it also quiets the engine tremendously. So there's no need for a muffler. So even more weight saving and more simplicity in the engine. Of course, at the back of the turbocharger, we're going to run an intercooler, and we're going to run the high pressure air to the inlet of the throttle body.
I just want to pop in real quick and invite you all to our 31-day build challenge, which starts in December 1st through the 31st, which is why the 31 days. Every day is an opportunity to get something done on your aircraft, even if it's something very small like reading plans or setting out something for the next day. The idea is everybody has their end of year, New Year's resolution, and this is kind of a way to get started very early in December. And amongst other builders, they're doing the same thing. So I invite you to post some, we prefer video, but definitely photos of what you got going on in your hangar or your home workshop or even at your kitchen counter. Share with everybody what you got going on the Experimental Aircraft Channel group. That's on Facebook. Just search Experimental Aircraft channel and groups. That should pop right up. And join us for the 31-day build challenge. And also, let's take a moment right now to thank our sponsors. Dynon Avionics at Dynon.com, the premier provider of glass panel avionics systems for experimental and light sport aircraft. And visit our website at experimentalaircraftchannel.com for new videos and easy-to-navigate playlists, and so much more.
Very similar engine, the 160. The 140 is in production and it's been selling for a couple of years. 160 is now our prototype engine in 2023, and we're moving into 2024, and it will be available in 2025. This is a very similar engine to that one, except they made the engine with just slightly more bigger turbochargers, slightly more displacement, went up from 1.2 to 1.3, slightly bigger throttle body, everything just a little bit bigger to go from 140 up to 160 horsepower. This would be, as far as a comparable engine in the light sport and home-built airplane industry, or sport, would be an equivalent engine to the Rotax 916. It is also turbocharged. It has our the Viking, traditional Viking gearbox on it. It uses a liquid cool pump over here, a starter motor here. You have in and out for the coolant. We have a ring gear here, very heavy duty actually, because all of these models of engines now have become what they call stop-start models. That part that you hate in your car when you get in a new car and it always wants to shut down. Well, the advantage with that as far as longevity is we get a nice solid ring gear and a really solid starter. And when we only start the engine once a day when we go flying, that's nothing like the hundreds of times that the engine starts itself if you live in New York City. Stop and go traffic. It's still direct injected, pumps up on here, 3-cylinder, again, has the balance shaft in the engine, the chain-driven cams back here, variable cam intakes. We don't use the exhaust variable cam, but we do use the variable intake cam. As you can see, this is our prototype engine. We've had it running. It runs really good, but we're yet to finalize it with the finished bracketry and everything that are required in order to be able to mount it in an airplane and fly it. So we'll keep you up to date on the 160 by General Motors. Moving right along, we have the Viking 150 model, which is what we have here behind me. As we said before, there's 6 of them here, more being built. Very popular engine to go into all of the Zenith models, 650, 750, both STOL and cruiser, 601XL. Also airplanes like, again, back to the Kit Fox, the Rance. We have this in the Rance S21. It actually performs as well as the 915 up to 12,000 feet, and of course at 12,000 feet the turbocharger on that 915 Rotax is able to do slightly better. But as far as performance for everyday flying, much less money, much simpler engine, again with the integral exhaust manifold, super compact inline engine, coil on plug ignition. Always, very clean oil. Never really have to add any oil to these engines. Not as much as you would on a traditional engine anyhow. Thermostat housing, like we talked about, the ring gear, the gearbox. The gearbox, we can talk a little bit more on this engine since it's right here. All the parts in the gearboxes by Viking are forged. We got the forged prop hub, forged input gear, idler gear, and output gear. Most all bearings are now roller bearings. We have gone up through the years with more expensive bearings and roller bearings to get more support. And we have an excellent gearbox that runs at, you can run it for a long time, and you can watch your oil level and the color of the oil through the sight glass that in most instances you can see it through an opening in the cowling before pre-flight.
Hey, Jan, we spoke off camera for a minute. You've gone through a couple different renditions over the years as you just learn new things and whatnot. You are now design locked into the Xbox. Is that correct?
This is the Xbox. We're at the Xbox now. Now, if you have an earlier Viking engine, you might or might not have the Xbox, but you can get it updated by Viking. What that means is it has what I just said about the more expensive roller bearings and so forth. And you can clearly see if you have the Xbox or an earlier version with a stamp right here on the front. So this, of course, is an Xbox. Now, this engine, looking at this side, for people that know engines, don't know engines, I'm going to just dive into that slightly. As you can see on, and we're going to show it further down the line here, on a turbocharged engine, you don't need a big intake manifold. Now, of course, on a normally aspirated engine, you need a bigger intake, and the reason that you need it for maximum power is because the length of the runners actually have something to do with the bouncing of the air in the runners to maximize torque and power at certain RPM. That's why you see the larger intake. So, but still a very compact, simple engine, very popular. For those that want the most simple engine, non-turbocharged, no intercooler, this would be a great choice. The displacement is 1.8. And so a little bit bigger than the next few engines we're going to look at, and I'm going to explain why. This one has 150 horsepower, basically because it's the 1.8. A 1.5 of this a same layout would be a little bit less power, and that is 130. And we're going to move over to the 130. The 130, we're not going to say too much about. It's been around for a long time. We're going to focus more. As you can see, we have a lot more of the 150s here. Honda doesn't sell this engine in the United States anymore, so there won't be as many of these produced as other models that we're going to talk about today. Now, so we basically have the same thing, a 1.5 direct injected. By the way, the 1.8 is port injected. What's the difference? It doesn't have this high pressure pump on the camshaft. It injects fuel into the intake runner at 43 psi. These engines that are direct injected, and we had the 140, the 160, the 130, and the 195 that we're going to get to, those are direct injected, which, by the way, in an airplane is absolutely perfect. There's nothing wrong with direct injection. Some people might say, oh, I've heard you get carbon buildup on the valves and all that. But of course, in an airplane where we don't route blow-by from the engine back into the intake, we dump it overboard like every airplane. We don't have that issue. So you get all the benefits of direct injection without any kind of drawback. Now,
which means you don't use a PCV valve on these engines.
Yeah, exactly. You don't use a PCV valve. You just have basically a tube or a hose, and you run it. Usually we run it like right onto the exhaust manifold, and that just burns up any fumes. Of course, there's very little blow-by in these modern engines anyhow, so you know, you can run it overboard or you can run it onto the exhaust manifold. Now, moving along from the 130, we're going to jump up, like we said earlier, to the biggest engine, not in horsepower, but in displacement. And that was the one, the K-Series engine we mentioned. Again, inline, 2-liter, a lot of power, a lot of torque. Almost has a built-in turbocharger when you think of it as the VTEC part. It has a variable cam on the intake, and it also has a high lift cam, which means that at certain RPM, that cam will change to a different lobe, and you'll get more intake air because the valves will open further, and you get that extra power that the enthusiasts that are driving cars with this engine are talking about, where it feels like you're getting a turbocharger power when the VTEC is kicking in, and that's what that means. Other than that, it would be for someone that want to build a bigger airplane like a Super Duty, or even a 750, you want a little bit more power, this would be the engine. And you would not have the direct injection. It would just be a very basic port injection. You would still have the coil on plug. You would have the integral exhaust manifold with a very simple exhaust system. You would have, like we said, the bigger manifold because you're not turbocharged, so you need the longer intake runners. You could run a variable propeller on any of these engines. This particular engine has a hole in the gearbox right here. And we have a rod we can run through that to operate our Duke propeller. And if we look over here, we can see the very basic and simple actuating mechanism right here that moves this rod behind the gearbox to push the rod through the gearbox to actuate the propeller. Very simple, no slip rings out in the propeller, no motors, nothing. Just right next to here, and just a rod running the mechanism by itself.
So just another little behind the scenes up in the air. Jan has been working on this project from Zenith. It's one of the first, if not the first, match hold 701. See it hanging from the rafters up there. I understand that there's been some parts delayed, but I think they've just received them. So on to the next phase of building the all match hold 701, powered obviously by Viking. Okay, a very short glimpse tour of the back area of the hangar here. So Jan's going to talk about the 140 mounted on their 601 Zenith aircraft. 650. All right, what do you got?
Yeah, so this is one of those engines we saw up front. It's our 140 turbo. And we now have flown it for a couple of years, a couple hundred hours on it, and it's been absolutely trouble-free, and that's why we're so stoked about having engines, you know, in addition to the Honda engines, because there are other engines that are quite capable of becoming aircraft engines. And this little 1.2 liter turbocharged engine has lots and lots of torque, lots and lots of power, and of course it's light enough to fit into these little airplanes. So the future might be going towards these more high output and lighter and smaller and more efficient engines.
Many of you have seen this very aircraft at some of the STOL competitions this past year or past couple years, and Jan's been using this kind of as a test mule for all kinds of things, from modified ladder suspension gear to different propellers, different nose gears. As you can see now, it's brought all the way back to near or factory. And Jan, why is that?
That is because, like Alissa was saying, and I agree with her, that we have to follow along with what the latest is at Zenith, because Zenith is 90 or 80% of our business. And we like those guys. We like Roger and we like Sebastian, and we just kind of is a big giant family as far as business and friendship and all that. So now when they came out with their 701, and we had already built the first Super Duty, we had the first flying Super Duty, we figured, well, let's take this guy and put it back, make him original again. And then a gentleman was, you know, extremely interested in buying it for his time building to become an airline pilot. So we're back on the same wheels, the same landing gear. We have done some updates for him as far as bringing the engine up to snuff with the new high torque studs on the engine, the new cowling. This one has a fixed pitch, like a 82-inch Duke propeller, and basically we have put it together to become a time builder instead of a STOL, full-blooded STOL airplane.
All right, now on to Alissa, who works not in the background, but as a joint venture partner with that man over there, hiding behind the computer.
Yeah.
So Alissa will explain kind of, I guess, the ordering process and the different things you guys offer, inclusive to the engine and installation packages and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So as an engine manufacturer, for our customers to be the most successful, it obviously matters that we have a full working kit that goes with that. So that means firewall forward components, radiators, cowlings, engine mounts, propellers, and all of that is a big part of the testing that took place way before these engines hit the market. So a lot of what you'll receive in the kits will be things that are already tested. They have everything that they need. It's more of a plug and play type of situation as long as you follow the videos that are online. So all of our technical videos are online, and you know, if you see an engine that you like and you have an idea of an airplane that you're going to put it on, we've done over 50 different firewall forward kits. So more than likely we've already done what you're looking at, or if not, we can. It's a pretty simple process for us now. And we kind of move from there. We have about 1,500 engines out there worldwide now, with dealers in Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, and different parts of the world, as well as obviously our main sales are here in the United States. From there we offer, someone will usually contact me, I'll send them over an invoice, I'll send them all the extras that we do, such as powder coating and variable pitch propellers and things that kind of go above and beyond what a standard kit would. Beyond that, we ship it out. So our lead time is usually only about 2 weeks or so. So as you can see, we have a floor full of engines, and we usually just we have an idea of what's coming in the next month or two, and we have those ready to kind of get on the pallet. We have to make the cowlings individually and get it all packed up. It's usually a day process, and it gets on its way to you, and you'll receive it in a box, and you'll just kind of plug and play at those videos and kind of just install it. Usually, we also have services here as far as like a panel that we can kind of pre-wire for you to make the wiring process a little bit easier. Some of that is shown there. We have an installation that's actually coming up. He will be here on Sunday in a Zenith 750 STOL, and we're going to install a Viking 150, and it'll take 3 to 4 days, and then he will leave, and he's actually coming all the way from across the United States.
So you guys are offering installation services here, and are you still traveling out to site?
Yeah, we do. So we still travel out to sites. It's a little more involved for us to do, and it obviously requires us flying and making sure we have all the applicable tools, and then we are kind of out of office for a few days. But the reality is it's a huge benefit for those that have moved further along in their build, but they're kind of tired of building and they want to start getting to that flying moment. So in a couple days we can have the engine install done, and it also allows, you know, a lot of people aren't comfortable. Maybe they're comfortable with aluminum and sheet metal or fabric, but they're not super comfortable doing the wiring and the fuel and the routing. Those are some of the hardest things that you'll have to do before you start flying your airplane. So that enables us to do that for them. And then we also tend to look over the airplane as well and make sure everything is safe as we know it can be. And then, so we do them here and we do them on site, but we also do first flights. So we just recently came back from New Jersey, and we're going somewhere else next month. But anyway, we just got back from New Jersey, and we spend a whole day, we go through the entire airplane. We fly the aircraft and make sure everything is kosher with the engine and everything like that. So something that you wouldn't necessarily know or hear or see, Jan can pick up on when he's flying and kind of tell you the to-do list of things that you still need to fix or work on, and that makes it a little bit safer for you kind of moving forward, and then you can kind of worry more about flying the airplane versus all the things that can go wrong.
You guys also offer, I think, is it 1 or 2 times a year you have an engine workshop here in the back room there?
We usually have this all open, and that is all open in the back, and we have multiple planes that usually fly in from different areas. But we have an engine workshop coming up February. It's the first week of February, so I think that's the first, second, or third, something like that. And yeah, that's the same every single year. So this year will be our 7th or 8th year doing that. And last year we had over 80 people here. So Sebastian from Zenith also comes down, does a little talk during that. We had a good customer fly down from Missouri, Phil Schmidt, who did a whole kind of talk on vinyl wrap. We had different discussions on all kinds of different things. So it's a really nice event to get to know a lot of the customers and the people that deal with the engines and ask them their real experience and what that is. So like I said, we have a lot of customers worldwide. I can get you in contact with all of those people, and they can tell you what their experience has been instead of just talking to me, which is the great part about this community. Everybody's really willing to share. Everybody's really willing to offer their advice and how they can help. And we've had other people even drive to people and fly to people to help them finish up their airplanes. So it's a really great community, and a big portion of that is the Zenith community as well, which many people know we kind of specialize in that. So out of the 1,500 engines that we do have, about 900 of them are all Zenith, and that kind of grows daily.
So aside from the once-a-year engine workshop that is here, where could somebody see you out in the field at air shows? Which shows will you attend?
We go to quite a bit. Actually, our next event is obviously the engine workshop because we're getting into the holidays. And then we go to the Texas Rudder Workshop every year that Zenith puts on in February. So towards the end of February, we go to that. We've been going to it since it started. After that, we have Sun and Fun. We've been there pretty much since it started at the same booth we've always been at. And then we'll also have, I guess Oshkosh would be the next one after that. And we've been there Jan's been there 31 years now, 32 years. So we'll be there right next to Zenith like we always are, and kind of like a big conglomerate, so everybody can see that. And then we go to the Zenith Homecoming every year with a large group of people, so you'll get to see maybe 15, 20 different Viking-powered Zenith aircraft there too and talk to those customers. So,
what do you do to these things when you receive them here on a pallet?
once we have the actual block, you can see most everything you see here is from the car. So what do? Well, we obviously need a way to mount the engine in an airplane. So in fact, let's move down to this engine down here so we can show the mount on the engine. We have one right here. This is actually an engine that's about to be mounted to an airplane. And as you can see, it has a 4130 steel engine mount right here. And in order for that to fit on the engine, now of course this has a lot of things laying on it because it's, like I said, this one is almost ready to go into an airplane. We're going to have an airplane here and do that installation. But here's a bracket that gets machined, designed, machined, and then we have a place that can be bolted to the engine, and then we can design a 4130 steel mount that can bolt to the engine in the appropriate place. And then as you see down here, same deal. We have to find areas on the engine where we can bolt something structural, a bracket, and then we can add a mount that has the rubber dampers in it for the 4130 mount to bolt to the engine. So that is one giant thing, of course, in a conversion from automotive to an airplane, is to make sure that you can mount it properly at the right height, the right distance from the engine, any kind of offset to the airframe for torque values, P factor, those kinds of things. Now, then, as an engine comes in from a car, most cars need a lot of juice as far as electrical, you know, so you have a giant alternator like this producing 160 amps. We have no need for 160 amps in an airplane, so we put a small nip condenser alternator, and of course that needs bracketry and so forth for that to work in an airplane situation where you don't need anything more than maybe 20 amps, so we go to 40. So you give you 40 amps, that's enough for you.
That little alternator puts out 40 amps.
That's 40 amps right there, yep. Yep. And then you move around the engine, maybe on this side. Sometimes the intake manifold is usable, but maybe the throttle body is not, or it's not in the right place, so we shift that around. Obviously a different air filter than what comes in the car. Here again we see the bracketry that's used for mounting the cup for the silicone dampers that hold the engine now to the mount. Now, the wire loom that comes stock with the engine, we don't use it, and obviously car engines are quite sophisticated. They use all kinds of things on the engine to operate it in a car. Our ECU is a little bit simpler. It doesn't know anything about the car. It doesn't know about the doors. It doesn't know if your trunk lid is shut in order to be able to start the car and all this stuff. It doesn't know anything about that. So the actual harness that runs the engine is much, much smaller. And more importantly, we don't use the copper wires that don't have any tinning or coating on them. So we use aviation grade, color-coded, labeled Tefcel wiring for everything to make it easy to install the engine and knowing what wire goes where, and also to have a harness that'll last, you know, much longer than the engine, because if you ever had to rebuild the engine, you don't want to have to make a new harness. You want a harness that is made from the proper wiring and the proper shielding, basically aviation Tefcel wire. Well, we still have a gearbox, but we're not driving a transmission that drives the rear or front wheels on a car. We have to drive a propeller. And also we cannot drive the propeller down here where the crankshaft is. We have to move it up to here because we need some ground clearance for a propeller, and we need to be able to put a spinner on here to get a nice cowling. So it's very important that, you know, the engine fits a streamlined cowling. You know, it's very important for builders to have something that looks nice and where the front then can blend into the airframe. And of course, cowlings are another part of Viking's business. We don't just sell you an engine. It's incredibly important that you have a streamlined cowling that looks as good or better than the original cowling that might be available with the kit plane that you're building.
All right, Jan, so you mentioned about the we call them a cush drive, I guess, in motorcycles. What do you call them on engines here? But
well, we call, well, basically it's just a rubber bushing, and it's three links of it. There's one here, and there's 2 more to make a circle, and each one is a hard rubber, and it has rope in it to make it strong.
Okay.
And the important part there for anyone that ever works on these engines, probably the most important part as far as not omitting, is that, of course, this doesn't center, you know, a gearbox because they're 3 individual links. So there's a bushing that goes inside between them that's made out of Delrin, of plastic, and that's a sacrificial bushing that we always send out a new centering bushing with the gearbox, or if somebody wants to pull a gearbox off an engine and put it back on, they should always use a new centering bushing. And that just, even if you run the engine for an hour or 10 minutes, you pull the gearbox back off, you need to use a new centering bushing. All right, so Sal's rebuilding a gearbox here. He's been updating these bearings from ball bearings to roller bearings. As you can see, the rollers have a lot of surface area, and so there's all roller bearings now, even this drive coupling. Here's the drive part that the rubber coupling sits on, and here's where the centering bushing would be aligned on. So this is a backing plate, we call it, for a 130 engine. So it is not universal as some of the newer backing plates that have a lot more holes to mount the different engines. This one will only work on the Viking 130 engine. And then we have, like here for instance, is a machined, so there's no castings, everything is billet machined. Really nice stuff, high grade aluminum, and this will be what we would refer to as a front housing. And again, it would have large roller bearings in here, dual roller bearings, single roller bearing, the dual roller bearings back in here, and then there's O-ring grooves for the sealing, so when that gets mounted to the back plate, it seals properly. And then there are dowel pins in 4 locations for precision alignment between the front and the back housing. And then these gears are probably the most expensive part of the production of a gearbox like this, where you have a spline for the propeller hub, dual bearings, single bearing, plenty of teeth, helical cut, and of course these are all forged, and then they're cut, hobbed, ground, and then heat treated and then ground. And then one of these will then sit up here for the propeller, and another one would sit here as an idler, and that constitutes the gearbox. So gearboxes have to be done correctly, and they have to be, last a long time and not let you down. But at the same time, they should be very simple, so that if you ever did have to rebuild one, it's nothing more than some bearings and gears.
All right, now that all the hard work is over with, got some behind the scenes, if you will, of the crowd here at Viking Aircraft Engines. So don't want to not give credit where credit is due, because these guys, are on the camera a lot, but there's other people involved in this company. So who else is involved in this company here?
Well, we're missing one today. Kim is my assistant, which many of you have spoken with, and she packs a lot of your packages. But Sal's been with Jan, and now Jan and I, 15 years? 18 years? Yeah, a ridiculous amount of time. So, and he does all of the wire harnesses and pretty much every engine that you guys all receive. Sal goes down his checklist, and he's a rock star when it comes to that. So
what's your favorite part of the build when you're building up these engines?
Running them.
Running them. Reward.
That means he's done with them.
Making sure it's done right. But no, we all work as a team here, and we obviously have Jerry, who is our welder. He works off-site, and a lot of other people that kind of make this pretty instrumental for us. So it's something made out of passion, and something made out of love, and something that we hope to continue to do for many more years.
Thank you to our patrons over on Patreon, and 10TED10 in our co-pilot status. If you feel like supporting us, check us out on patreon.com. And if you are new here, welcome. You are invited right now to subscribe, like this video, and hit that bell so you don't miss a single episode.